At Airbnb, once we launched the program, it just started our journey on learning what our employees wanted, what they did, where did they need more support that we didn't anticipate. Nomadism was not really a thing in the corporate context because companies had offices, and even if you work remotely a few days a week, you were tethered around a particular geography. So right away, when people started wanting to cross borders in the corporate context, we realized that we had two choices.
Hello, heroes of hybrid work. I'm Jenny Mobius and an SVP at Skeda, where I'm lucky I get to help organizations bring their hybrid workspaces to life every day. Part of that mission includes bringing you the latest data and insights from today's top voices, researchers, and business leaders so you can make the best decisions for your business. On today's pod, Q Hamirani, former global head of people at Airbnb and current chief people officer of Paper, takes us on Airbnb's journey to pioneering corporate nomadism through their Live and Work Anywhere program, navigating the legal complexities of cross-border movement for work, why remote first doesn't mean no in-person experiences, and why hybrid work is no longer a perk. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on Heroes of Hybrid Work. Been reading a lot about you and how you really kind of wrote the book on hybrid work at Airbnb. It is really fascinating to learn more about the corporate nomadism or corporate nomads.
Yeah.
You know, what really struck me about it, and maybe we could start by actually talking a little bit about the program, but what really struck me was how closely aligned it was to Airbnb's mission and how important it is to align the ways that we work to the actual company objectives and goals. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about the program and then how you thought about it when you did, think a bit in terms of company mission.
Yeah, no, happy to share. And I think it's really interesting when you look at a lot of this in hindsight, right? Because hindsight's always 20/20, but it's fascinating to share a little bit on how this came about, because that was not the end result, was not the grand plan when we started.
Sure.
So I'll rewind a little bit to the first half of the pandemic, which I'm referencing as summer of 2020, which was when by that time all of us around the world were a couple months or more into a pandemic of total shutdown. It ended up, for Airbnb, it ended up meaning that we went into a remote work environment overnight, like a lot of companies actually, unless you were in essential work and you needed to kind of do your job in person, like healthcare, for example. And what we realized roughly in like July, August of 2020, which is a few months into the pandemic, that our employees really wanted to travel around the world. And when I say at this phase in the first half of the pandemic, they didn't want to travel to like go and necessarily travel in the sense of explore new places and hop around. What they wanted to do was they wanted to be more closely connected to loved ones, families, both in the spirit of, obviously it was a very dark moment for humanity in terms of people not making it, which was very unfortunate. So people wanted to travel around the world either to be with loved ones or be where they were from, because otherwise they were cooped up in a particular apartment. And in some countries around the world, there was curfew. Where they mandated, where people were not allowed to go out as well, right? Some countries, the weather was not where you could go for a 2-3 hour walk like I could in San Francisco. So anyways, so people wanted to move, and when people wanted to go around the world, the tricky part was they wanted to cross borders, right? It's like, I'm from a country in Europe and I want to go back to be with my family and I live in the US. Now, the minute you have cross-border movement for work, it is very complex from a compliance legal risk standpoint. And that is primarily because if we think of, as the word that I've coined that you reference called corporate nomadism, right? Nomadism is not a new concept. It's always been around, pre-pandemic as well. But pre-pandemic, it's very, it's very much in relation to the gig workforce. Right. Nomadism was not really a thing in the corporate context because companies had offices. And even if you work remotely a few days a week, you were tethered around a particular geography. So right away, when people started wanting to cross borders in the corporate context, we realized that we had two choices. We could say you cannot do it, or three choices, I should say. One, you cannot do it, which a lot of companies took that stance because there was a lot of risk involved. B, we could say do it and we'll just turn a blind eye, which a lot of startups were able to do as well. But mind you, this is a point where Airbnb is still not public. We went public 3 months later. So we had to keep it in mind that we couldn't go too haywire in that regards. Or the third option, which is what we took, is we said, this is painful, but we're going to figure it out for the sake of our employees and making sure that they have the right experience and overall well-being in this context as well. So what we did was in August 2020, we incubated a program at Airbnb called the Digital Nomad Program that I helped incubate. And what that meant was we stood up a cross-functional team of in-house and external experts. And anyone that wanted to travel around the world, we said, open a request with us. We will look through all the complexities with you. And that meant studying tax treaties between the two countries the individual wanted to go to, which changed for every individual.
Yeah.
What their nationality was, what the privacy laws, what data access did they have, because if they access data in a different country, are subject to different privacy regulations and such. And we said we will let the individual know how long they can go for, what are their risks on themselves. And we will be aware of what the risks are on the company. And we will push ourselves to the boundary where we will be compliant, but we will do as much as we can. And in most cases, I'm generalizing, but in a lot of cases, individuals were able to go up to almost 6 months. Because a lot of the tax treaties have a 182 or 183 day limitation where you can be in a country and you don't have to be localized and you don't have to do all the tax liabilities internally. So we did that in August of 2020. And for 15 months after that, close to Jan of 2022, we just ran that program. And it was almost like I joke about it, was like my on-the-job PhD, right? We were trying to figure out all these complexities. How do we scale? How do we learn? How can we influence policy? What are the policy barriers at that point? Because regulations were not, they always move slow. And in this instance, they were on a pretty severe lag because no one expected this to happen overnight as well.
Sure.
At the time we incubated it, it's a 1-year program. World will go back to normal in a year. Let's just do this in this interim phase to support our employees. And it slowly progressed with the world moving and where we realized we want to move with the world. And we saw a lot of this in our own data, like short-term or long-term rentals on Airbnb, which is defined as stays of 28 days or longer, was our fastest growing category through the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, people would go for a week. It was more vacation driven, right? You'd go for a week or two, or you go for a weekend. Now people were staying months at a time. You had the monthly option on Airbnb. So we were trying to also influence the product. When someone goes to look for an Airbnb, can we have a filter that says remote friendly destinations? Because we know those destinations like Greece, Croatia, Malta, Bali, you can purchase a nomad visa and we can do that. Some countries dropped the whole nomad visa requirement too, like Colombia and Mexico. They said you can just go for a year and you don't need anything if you're a citizen of like 15, 20 different countries, US included.
So let me just get it clear. So did the nomad visa exist before this?
I believe it existed for a very few countries. So maybe one or two. I think countries like Bali may have had it.
But then with Airbnb's policy partnerships, it grew.
It started growing. So I think at least as of like 4 or 5 months ago, there were at least 30 countries that were offering it and growing. And, we have 200 countries in the world. So there's still a long way to go. So, just opening up borders, is a lot harder the interesting part was, it's hard because it's so convoluted in the geopolitical landscape. There's like underpinning, countries want to allow stuff to happen. So that's how it basically and once it became part of our business model, that's where when that magic moment clicked. That's when we internally at Airbnb said, we are going to double down on this. We're going to stand up a whole center of excellence and that's what I ended up leading in my last year and a half, to build out this program build out this kind of mix of like, some marketing, some product, etc. And we will also help the world or HR leaders. So I started going out and doing a lot of talks to help HR leaders understand that you can do this in a compliant way if you want. And if you do it, your employees who may be seeking it will be happy. You will be compliant. And hey, guess what? The unspoken thing is hopefully our business would go up.
Yeah.
Right. Because we host them. So that's a little longer response to how it came about.
It's fascinating. It's really impressive. You speak of having a fully remote culture, and being productive and IPOing and having great success. I read in a recent article that you were in that when you say remote world, you don't mean no in-person connection. And that actually struck me as something that people need to hear a little bit more. So tell me a little bit about that and how that worked out for you, either at Airbnb or at Paper, correct, is where you are today.
So I'm at Paper today, which is a remote first company as well. And, it's a really strong mission similar to Airbnb, but in its own unique way, which is to improve and reduce the inequality in education and learning through the public school systems in the US. But to your point, I think it's not binary that you have to be 100% remote, which means you never meet, or force people to come in 3 or 4 days in the office in kind of that hybrid context, which we're seeing a lot of organizations gravitate towards. And that's a whole nother topic or a whole nother kind of debate there. But I think for me, remote really means how do you blend intentional in-person moments of connection so that you can have an opportunity to strengthen those relationships. So I think one thing we learned was you can be very productive over Zoom, right? Like we're having this conversation. We could turn around a company. We could go IPO via Zoom. But if you want to really strengthen and build long-term relationships, you need that level of in-person connection. It could be once a year. It could be twice a year. It does not need to be every day is the point. It does not need to be every week. But you need those. It's almost like our both our social recharge barometer as well as our relationship barometer. You need to fill that up every now and then you can deplete it in a remote world, be productive and fill it back up, right? So that's exactly what our program was. Our Live and Work Anywhere program at Airbnb, to my earlier point, the Nomad program became a focal point of it, but it had a few other dimensions to it, which is really important to note, because one was we will have intentional moments of in-person gathering was part of it. We will give employees the option to come into the office or work from home. So I could go in every day. I could be home every day. I know what works best for me. Maybe I have a few weeks where I have 10 kids running around the house because family is visiting and I just don't have the right environment. So I go in. We also were one of the first tech companies to remove location-based pay. So what that meant was if you're within the country of employment, so if I'm in San Francisco like I am, and I want to move to a lovely, beautiful farm in Iowa and work from there, my salary would not change. Yeah. We shifted to value-based pay. And I think this, so the remote work or the future or any workforce models at an organization needs to be all encompassing. That's one of my big learnings through my career is one size fits all does not work in general life and it does not work in general workforce models because we are talking about almost the same thing. Mm-hmm. Just like, you and me are doing this today. If you're in San Francisco or we're in the same city, we probably grab a coffee and get to know each other better. Like, just like we do that with our own family or our own friends, where we meet occasionally in person and we stay connected via WhatsApp or text messaging or whatever the messaging of form of choice is, mm-hmm. This is no different.
That's right.
So you have to build a holistic program that's all encompassing. And the goal there is that at least one component of the program will relate to everyone. All of them won't relate to everyone, but you're intentionally building for multiple personas.
Onboarding someone into your business can sometimes feel like you're drowning them in rules. Don't share sensitive client information, and don't talk to Greg before he's had his coffee. But what if rules were built into the flow of your workspace? The easiest rules to remember are the ones that happen automatically. The dude abides. That's what a rules engine allows you to do. As you add users to Sketa, you'll be able to assign them roles according to their access level. Different users will have different booking access to different spaces. You can get as specific as you'd like, setting the times that users can book, limiting it to certain spaces, creating minimum booking windows, and more. Stay secure while giving your users a seamless experience. Skeda, hybrid work, people first.
I was also just reading this Gartner report that said 51% of knowledge workers are projected to work hybrid and 20% remote in the US. Gartner says hybrid is no longer just an employee perk, but an employee expectation. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, I agree with that. And I would go a little beyond and say like remote work is becoming employee expectations too, right? It may be for that 20% now, but if we look at remote work adoption pre-pandemic to today, it's up like 5 or 10-fold. So again, we don't have to believe that for this trend to continue, every single person has to work remotely, but we do have to understand or believe that knowledge workers that no longer need to be tethered to an office will want the flexibility, and employees that don't give it, my belief is over time, once the macroeconomic conditions get a little better and such as well, employees will eventually gravitate to what they want. And we've not even unpacked the fact that by having these hybrid policies, you're limiting your talent pool to a particular geography, right? Like opening up the talent pool has vast impacts both on your organization, because now you're welcoming diversity of thought and representation, but you're also doing good in the world. You're spreading socioeconomical kind of wealth, if you will, and that could, obviously, like everything, there's two sides to the coin. So there's the good and the bad. So it's not always good, but there is more good than bad, is my belief on exploring that.
Well, we agree with you there. So how do you manage remote and in-person employees, and what's the best way to do that, and how do you ensure equity between the two?
So I think one of the best ways to do it is being very intentional about in-person gatherings. Specifically, what I mean by that is if teams are doing offsites or teams are meeting, either have a process where you're being thoughtful about people meeting and what they plan to achieve. Yes, there's a level of social connection that's, it does not need to be 100% work. It could be 90% work and 10% obviously you're also going out and having meals and you're socially connecting. But in general, I think you need more of a streamlined process on when and why people are meeting. And this could stretch to, depending on your size, it could be an all company meeting twice a year. Which takes a lot of coordination and logistics, and almost you're an event planner at that point. And obviously there's great companies that you can partner with for that too. But you be intentional about that. And then I think overall there is no right frequency. I think the right frequency is more dependent on your business model, your culture, what you're trying to drive. For some, it could be once a month. For some, it could be once a quarter. I would say like at minimum once a year, if not twice a year or once a quarter is great.
Yeah.
And it organically ends up happening, right? So I've been at Paper, for example, for 5 months now. For the first 4 months, I was traveling every other week to meet my team, to go to our offices, to make sure I was able to onboard myself. So it ebbs and flows is kind of what I'm going based on. It could be projects, it could be transition points, onboarding. So I think you have to be intentional about what you're trying to achieve so you can make the best time of it. And honestly, in today's macroeconomic environment, you have to be fiscally responsible too. So that goes hand in hand a little bit with forcing that thoughtfulness.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that you were going in when you started. I think that is actually the most important time to meet in person is when you're beginning a job or you have a direct report beginning a job and you need to manage them and mentor them. I feel like that is the biggest battery charge if you're talking about charging. And I don't think people talk about that enough as well. Like, yes, it's great to be remote, but those first moments in a company get you bought in. They, get you connected to your manager. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's the initial charge, right? I don't think it's like when you buy an iPhone today, I think they come fully charged the first time. I don't think that's unfortunately, we haven't figured out a way to infuse that, right off the bat. But you're right. I mean, that's the initial charge. And I think those are kind of moments where we need to double down on almost, because we need to make sure those are done right, because the damage in a remote world can be a lot, it can be a lot more. Remote work is, people sometimes think remote work is easy and you just let things happen and they work, and it's not hard, but it's not easy either, because you need intentionality behind it.
Yep.
And this is
An
a good example of it.
an expectation setting. I've
Exactly.
found more than ever, having to go back to the basics, and even junior employees who are just starting out and kind of went through the pandemic in college, they
Yep.
need so many, I guess, lessons in the basics of
Yep.
responsiveness and working hours.
Yeah.
So do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think there's expectation settings, and I think it's even more important because, when we talk about multi-generational workforces, right? The styles and the styles, and I read somewhere, I think it was recently, where Gen Z actually likes more in person than the previous
Yes.
generation, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
expectations are important to set a level playing field of the baseline that you expect across everyone, because different generations have different styles of working, which means they have different assumptions, which if
That's
you don't
right.
set the expectations, just lead to confusion and
Yeah.
unclarity across the board.
Yeah. We're close to time. Do you mind if we go over a couple minutes?
Yeah,
I'm
that's fine.
just
Yeah,
really
yeah,
enjoying the
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay,
Likewise.
great. It's a half an hour, just doesn't cut it here. Basically, when people come to these interviews, I feel like they have something in mind that they want to share. And sometimes I don't ask the right question to get that out. Like, is there something about hybrid work that you really have a strong opinion on or sense on that you really want to get out there that potentially could be more unique than others?
Yeah, sure. I can share. I think one viewpoint on workforce models is it's frustrating sometimes to see that people are so opinionated on what they are doing is the only right and best way to operate in. And I think there is a level of copycat following here too, right? If one organization does 3 days a week and they have a good brand, that means it's the best thing, and everyone just kind of blindly starts following, and not everyone, a good percentage. My biggest frustration when I read a lot of these headlines, and this applies to even folks that are doing remote work and are bashing the other side because they think remote work is the best thing,
There's a
is
lot of bashing.
really everyone needs to really understand what works best for their culture and what works best for their business model, right? Like if you are in retail and you can't really do much, and that's okay, own it, acknowledge it. So I think for me, the biggest thing is everyone needs to define what works best for them, and they need to be really transparent and honest with why they're doing something. And this could extend to, I'm an executive coach and I talk to a lot of founders regularly. And, sometimes it's my job to ask a tough question on, I think founders or executives sometimes lean towards or gravitate towards, let's do 3 days a week or 4 days a week because a brand is doing it, only because they want to stay in their comfort zone. They want to stay in a space that they are used to operating in, which is if they see people, that there's that unconscious comfort that they're working. Step
Yeah.
out of that and step out of that and ask yourselves, is this the right thing for the right business model? And what do your employees want? You may be in a smaller organization where employees are mostly Gen Zs and want to come in. So then have that
Right.
program. You may be on
Right.
the opposite where they don't want to come in and you're going to force them, and guess what's going to happen? They're not going to listen. And then you're going to be faced with a very important question on, do you start firing people for not coming in, or did you just make empty threats?
Yeah.
So I think really coming back to build what's right for you, listen to your employees, try to meet them in the middle, and also being honest. If you think seeing people is comfortable and a good way to work, then own that and work with that. So I
Yeah.
think for me, just making sure it's unique, it's customized to you like any other program. And owning what you're comfortable with, because sometimes I think the rationale is not explained well, or it doesn't digest, and then
Yeah.
it's just confusion all around in terms of going back to your comment on setting expectations
Yeah.
from the other side as well.
That makes a lot of sense. We have some employees who want to come to a desk that's all set up for them, right? We have some that just need their laptop. We have
Yeah,
some that
yeah,
want to come in for lunch. We have, right?
yeah,
And I think it is about building an intentional culture too, as you said.
exactly. Yeah, and I would just close with, it's not a one and done thing. So continue to iterate, continue to understand what's working, what's not. Even we did this at Airbnb once we launched the program. It just started our journey on learning what our employees wanted, what they did, where did they need more support that we didn't anticipate, and we launched programs to help get them that support.
Yeah.
So it's an iteration towards greatness, for lack of better words, and continue learning. And this applies to anything we do, honestly, but it's even more important in this situation as well, is what I would wrap with on that.
I agree. I think we're all figuring this out together. Just one quick last question. So our producer here found that you're a short film and art fan, kind of found your IMDb. So what kind of things are you producing? What are you passionate about?
Yeah, so I've independent produced, I've executive produced a few independent films, and I think it really comes down to me is like a lot of things I do in my day to day is really supporting mission-driven young artists that may not have the funds or the opportunity to complete a project. That's how I did my first one. Great group of artists that were stuck with funding. They were either not going to finish the project or finish it if they got funding. I helped them. And from an executive production standpoint, and once they did that, they went on to win awards around the world, and now they're all great artists. So I typically try to give back in ways where I want to be creative, but I'm not an artist, and I wish I could be, but this is my way of being engaged in that ecosystem. But it all comes down to really values and mission, which is supporting people and empowering them to be their best, be it as a chief people officer for an organization or an executive producer of an independent film. I had also started a music label 10 years ago, which was only for artists that were never signed with a label and wanted to get their names out there for a specific genre of music that was not very well known. So it really comes down to that. So that's my, I try to dabble with making beats and stuff on the side too. I'm not great at it, but I do it for myself. But this is a way for me to be connected and keep my creative spirit alive in some form or the other. So that's a good find. Yeah, it's definitely out there.
I love that. Yeah. Connor, are you listening? I mean, you may have an investor in your future. Well, Q, I can't tell you how much I appreciated this conversation. It's definitely one of the best. How can people find you? That's the last one.
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn or on my website, which is, you can get to my website in a couple ways. It's my last name, Hamirani.com, or it's goliveandworkanywhere.com, or it's corporatenomadism.com. They all take you to my website. I have a contact form there, and I check it every day, and I will respond there. And LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me as well. So my website or LinkedIn.
Excellent. All right, we will make sure that people know about that. Well, I think that does wrap us up.